Hello, everyone. It's Calvin Watkins, realtor with Your New Home, Keller Williams Legacy, and today you are watching Your New Home TV. Your New Home TV was created to help people understand the home buying process, help those, whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or if you're a real estate investor. I created this program to help people understand the home ownership process, hence the name Your New Home. Whether you are a first-time buyer, second-time buyer, whether this is your 12th home, whether this is your first or 20th investment property, everything around what we do with Your New Home is to help people understand the home buying process. One of the most, if you remember last week, I had the mortgage mama on. She was talking about buying a mortgage, getting a mortgage. Mortgages are used in most homeowning transactions, pretty much how you're going to get the money you're going to use to purchase your house. But all that around money is a big deal because you can't have a house without the money. So with that, some people don't understand, so many people are renting houses now that they don't understand they have the budget to actually own a home. I saw a post today where a woman said the bank told her she couldn't afford a $950 mortgage, but she could afford a $1,400 rental payment. So I'm thinking like, wow, how is that set up? Why is that the case? So it's so often that we need to have ideas of how money works, how to manage money when it comes to buying a home. So I reached all the way out to New York to call a gentleman on. His name is Forrest, and Forrest is going to be joining us today to talk to you about budgeting. Forrest, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Calvin. How are you doing?
Pretty good. So let's talk about this, because one of the things with home ownership that people don't understand is budgeting. I mean, it's great to say, yeah, I want to buy a house. It's great to say, yes, this is the dream home for me. Or if not the dream home, I want to do investment in property. But so much of life, even everything from buying food every day, from managing, and if you live in an apartment, so much of it revolves around finance. And last week I had a woman on who was a mortgage lender, and she goes by the name of Maryland Mortgage Mama. She said, and I asked her, I said, so many times people put money aside to buy a house, and they say, okay, I got X amount of dollars, and I'm going to buy this house, and then they go buy a car. The bank looks at that as, hey, you have less money to spend. So, right. But it comes back to budgeting. So that's why I wanted to bring you on, and you can introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and tell us about what you do for homeowners.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Forrest Huguenin. I'm a financial life coach. Because life and money go together hand in hand. You can't separate the two of them. So when I'm working with clients, especially when I'm working with couples will often come to me or be referred to me because they want to buy a home and they recognize they need to get their finances in order to do that. So what I do with them invariably is get them practicing my SMART system of money management. SMART is a proprietary system that I developed, which consists of 5 principles which enable people to properly manage their money. And in doing so, they set themselves up beautifully to buy and maintain the home that they're going to get.
So if that's the case, because again, so often I know people who have good jobs, people who have professional careers, but so much around financial literacy, it calls for budgeting, and people are saying, okay, I can afford a $2,000 house. Why is that not always the case? Just because you have a good job?
You know what? It's always a principle. It's not how much you make. It's what you do with what you earn. So you can have a person who makes 6 figures and they are incapable of owning a home because their finances are a mess. But then you could have somebody who makes $40,000 a year and they're in a perfect position to own a home because their debt is paid down, they're managing their credit well, and they have enough in savings to make purchasing a home a viable option.
That's a good point. I have a friend that I can't give away his name. We grew up together, and he pretty much, he has this 9-to-5 job. He does and he's an investor. He bought some property. Now his job might pay him 40,000-50,000 a year, but his credit is good. He bought an investment property, and that investment property pays for, helps him pay his mortgage. But even before that, he had to budget for home ownership. So it's like, how do we wrap around what's the best way people can wrap their arms around budgeting for home ownership?
Well, here, if I could, I'm going to share my screen with everyone, and I'm going to actually show you a slide from a webinar that I am putting on today at 5 p.m. Everyone's welcome to join, and I'll give you more information on that in a second. But this right here is an actual slide from the webinar that I'm going to be putting on today, and it's my 5 SMART principles. So let me just take you through that. These foundational principles will help anyone who wants to own a home be in a position to own it. The first SMART principle is S for self-knowledge. Self-knowledge means knowing thyself. Why do you relate to money the way you do? And until you understand that, you're going to keep on making the same mistakes. So that means understanding who you are and what your money personality is. I've developed 4 money personalities I've discerned. There's the free-spirited surfer. There's the disciplined soldier. There's the kind-hearted, big-hearted first responder. And then there's the adventurous hunter-gatherer. Once you understand where you fall in those different personalities, now you can begin to understand how you relate to money and how you should plan accordingly. Because a person who's a free spirit isn't going to look at money the same way as a person who's a soldier, because the soldier is going to be more savings minded, where the surfer is going to be more spending minded. So you've got to put a budget together and work money in the way that fits into your personality, making smart decisions that way. The M stands for monetary awareness. That means knowing your situation. In other words, what actual assets do you have? Cash assets? What do you got in checking, savings? What non-retirement funds can you call on? And do you have any cash value life insurance policies that you could actually call on to contribute to your total financial situation? Once you know all of that, then you need to understand, well, what are my monthly obligations? What do I have going out the door expense-wise versus what I have coming in income-wise? When you put all 4 of those pieces together, you now understand your monetary situation. You check off that monetary awareness box. The third step, the A in SMART, stands for allocated spending. This is just a fancy way of saying budgeting. And budgeting is key, and I'm going to circle back to that. Budgeting means not putting handcuffs on yourself so that you're limited in how you can spend. Budgeting is actually permission to spend. It gives you freedom, because maybe some people who are listening right now or watching right now are familiar with this situation. You got too much month at the end of your money because the money's flying out and you actually don't have control of where it's going. So before the month is over, your checking account is empty. Your pay period may be a week away and you don't know what you're going to do. Whereas if you had a budget, meaning you assign every dollar a mission in your financial plan for the entire month, and you know, well, this dollar's going here, this dollar's going there, I can spend money in that category because I know I've already allocated it. That's the key to home ownership. And that lets you know right then and there, do I have enough room in my budget for all of the expenses related to owning a home? Now that brings us to the R, which is ready cash. Ready cash is very important, because if you haven't figured out by now in this COVID crisis, cash is king.
King.
So I always tell all of my clients, you need to have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund of living expenses, not income, living expenses, before you start thinking about buying a home. Now, this fund is separate and apart from what you're going to use for your down payment on the home. This is very important, and I'm going to explain why. When you buy a home, you know who's going to show up at your front door? A guy called Murphy. And Murphy is going to throw everything at you that can go wrong. Your roof is going to get a hole in it. Your furnace is going to go out. You're going to have plumbing issues. All of that is going to eat into your ready cash. And unfortunately, Calvin, what too many people do is they scrape together every cent they have to just get over the hump of putting that down payment, getting over all of your closing costs involved in buying the home. And then they get into the home, they're home rich and they're cash poor.
Cash poor.
Exactly.
Yes.
So go ahead.
No, I'm going ahead. I mean, this is great information because so often people do. That's how I wanted to toss in. You know, people are home rich, and cash poor, and they get into a house. They don't have the furniture. You know, they don't have the drapes. You know, I remember my first home. I remember the first home I bought. I said, I got to get this house. It was a HUD house. I got a good deal on it. And it had to be rehabbed. And I put all the time, effort, and money into rehabbing the house. So when it came up, beautiful home, you know, but we didn't have any furniture. You know, I didn't really care. But the woman I was married to at the time was like, we need some chairs. I was like, you know, we got this great house. So that's a great thing to explain because people don't understand that.
Right, exactly. So in doing that, you set yourself up for all kinds of problems, and the number one problem you set yourself up for is foreclosure. That's what's going to come down the line, because at some point, what is most likely to happen is you're going to suffer some kind of cash emergency. That means a big expense related to the home, a job loss.
Yes.
Between either you or your spouse or both of you at the same time, God forbid, or a medical emergency is going to come along, which is going to make large demands on the income that you have coming in. So now you have to make a decision. Do I pay for the medical bills or do I pay the mortgage? Now, if people have to make that choice, what are they going to do? They're going to pay the medical bills.
Right.
That's a nice moral decision, but now where does that leave you with the house?
Right.
That's what you're going to set you up right there for foreclosure.
Yeah. So, but here's what happened. So I'm gonna toss this at you. So today, mortgage rates are at an all-time low. You know, I have a couple dollars set up. My credit looks good. I didn't do all the budgeting. I just know, like the scenario I told you a little earlier. I just know that if I can afford $1,400 a month in rent in an apartment, I should be able to afford the same or less with buying a house. You know, the budget thing, I was like, all I ought to know is that because with an apartment, if you don't have that $1,400 a month at the beginning of the month, then you're going into eviction court. With a mortgage, it's a little different. It's like, okay, yeah, I can let it slide. I'll just catch it up next month. But budgeting is still important. So what should people do? And they said most people are like 21 to 24 months out before they buy a house. What should they do? I mean, how do they get ready?
All right, here's how you get ready. You incorporate those principles. Number one, you get your budget together. Now, budgeting is a very simple yet a very complicated thing.
Yes.
Because it's simple because it's just a few things you have to keep in mind when it comes to setting up a budget for yourself. But people make it complicated because they resist it. They think of it in such negative terms. They push back on it. And in so doing, it becomes a burden to you rather than a helper. So when I'm telling people to budget, again, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to just throw up something else that will help people here. And okay, budgeting right here. This is a page from an actual PDF that I sent out to my clients. Here in Budget and Reduce, you're setting up a bare bones budget. And the thing that you need to keep in mind is every budget needs to start with something. And you start with the bare bones. In other words, how much does it cost to live? What is your rent/mortgage going to be? Number two, how much does it cost to eat? You gotta eat. So you put that in there. Number three, how much are your utilities? Now, this is going to change because when you're renting, generally in that little apartment, either your utilities are included, or if they're not included, they're so small that they're not a big deal. But when you get into a house, do you know the utility company puts you on a different metering category? You actually pay more at that point. So your utility bill is going to be larger simply because you have more square footage to light and heat. You're going to be using more water. All of those things go into effect. Another thing you need to keep in mind is what are your transportation costs going to be to get back and forth to work? This might include what is your car payment? What is your insurance? What is gas for the car? Another thing people leave out, even when they own a car free and clear, is how much is it going to cost to maintain this car? Like tires are coming due. Wear and tear items like your timing chain, mufflers, things like that, oil changes, all these things come into view. And a lot of times when it comes to cars, because I used to sell cars, people mess themselves up with cars because they buy a car and they think, oh, I can handle the payment. But what if you have a BMW or a Mercedes?
Exactly.
Oil change for a BMW or a Mercedes is not the same as an oil change for a Honda Accord. So you have to keep in mind what all your obligations are. When you have all of those things in mind, now you start adding on to that. What are my other things like entertainment? What is it going to cost me to pay all my other outstanding debts in the course of a month? And so on and so forth. I actually have a worksheet that I take all of my clients through when it comes to that so that they can understand exactly what they need to account for when it comes to budgeting.
Why is it so hard? I mean, budgeting, I mean, you know, we see it all the time. You see someone with a $100,000 car in front of a $10,000 house. You see people, you know, and I don't know, because I'm not a budget expert, financial expert, you know, I see people, you know, you see commercials come on about leasing a car versus buying a car. There's just so many different programs out there. How do you sit down with someone and say, okay, looking at all that you make, looking at your assets, looking at what you want to buy and where you want to be in 10, 12, 24 months, this is the best plan for you.
Right. Well, there's a lot of pieces to that recipe.
Okay.
And the first thing I start out with is when I sit down with clients, what are your overall goals? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? And that means planning. So then once you know what your ultimate goals are, now I'm going to help you back into those goals. So we work back in time from the future to today. What should you be doing now in order to set yourself up to get to where you want to be? So you might say, well, you know what, man? I've been working my job for 15 years now, and my pension's going to be set up. I'm going to be ready to retire in another 5 years. I'm on a 20-year plan, for instance. Maybe you're one of these New York City transit workers. You got that kind of plan going on.
Right.
Now, okay, cool. When you go out, what is your pension going to be? What is your lifestyle going to be? So it's a matter of looking at where you are today, where you want to be tomorrow, and figuring out what are all the intermediate steps you need to put in place in order to get there.
Right. And I think that's a beautiful point because I know there's a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Even Covey starts out, start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
I was talking to a realtor the other day, you know, they said, you know, a dream or a dream without goals is just a dream. So financial planning helps people not only, they start off with their dream, like where they want to be, but you help them put the steps in place to get there. And it's so important. It's like a roadmap. If a ship that leaves the harbor with no map, it will probably run aground somewhere because that's a plan. So this financial planning and how you help people is really a critical component. It should be the very first step before you look at what you want to buy and what you want to own. The first step is get my money right.
Yep. You got to get that money right, because until that's right, nothing's going to be right in your life.
Do people change? I mean, you go through this process, it's like, okay, rates are low. I see houses on the market. I want to get this house. It's at 1111 Main Street, and I got some money saved up. I got my deposit, my down payment. Let's do it. If you get them on a budget, because plans change. People go into a house and say, okay, I was supposed to save 10%. Now I'm only giving 10% to my church, and I'm keeping the rest, and I'm buying another car. How does that process work? Change. People do change.
People do change.
How do you get them to stay the path, stay the course?
Oh, this is very critical. What I do is I ground people in what their priorities are.
Excellent.
You have to understand what your priorities are, and I take them through. Okay, what are your priorities? Is it worship? Is it family?
Watch yourself.
Is it work?
Yes.
Or is it play?
Yes.
Now you have to have a come to Jesus moment. So to speak, as far as these priorities are concerned. So if you say my worship comes first, but you don't want to give, then is that really in line with what you say your principles are?
Right.
No. If you say your family comes first, but you're taking every bit of overtime you can and you're not spending any time with your family, now, really, is that in line with your principles? So once I get people to understand what their principles are, that's when they start to have that come to Jesus moment, and they can now start making decisions more easily because they understand, you know what? These are my principles. Is this decision in line with my principles? Cool. Now, next step, is this decision, it's in line with my principles, but is it going to get me to where my goals are? So that all comes into the big why. And that's what I get people on. Once they understand what their big why is, it's much harder to walk away from your budget and start doing crazy stuff with your money.
Absolutely. And because finances are so personal, as a real estate agent, I talk to people want to hold on to that. They want to say, well, this is my budget, but they aren't really being genuine in their response. So tell us what's the best way to release, because we take it so personally. How do we let go of that the emotions of money and deal with it as what it is, brass tacks, and as people like yourself who are in the finance, how do we get our emotions out of the way so we can move forward?
Well, the way you get those emotions out of the way is to replace them with other emotions. And what I do is I take people through like a dream process, and I have them write out their ideal life in the future. If you could snap your fingers and have everything you wanted, what would that look like? And they actually go through an exercise where they write that down. Now, when you write that down, it starts to imprint on your mind. And now you start to understand, well, what's the cost to me of making this decision versus that decision? And when you start getting excited about the future that you want, it begins to push aside all of those, I want this now, I need instant gratification type of things.
Manifestation. That's excellent, because so often money it is emotional to us. We work hard for it. We don't want to talk about it. It's something
you can't get away from the emotions of money. You can't become Spock.
Right.
So
my man, right.
You can't do this with the money, right?
Right.
You have to, you're going to be emotional. We're emotional creatures.
Yeah.
So the question is understanding again what your money personality is, what your goals are, what your principles are, putting all of that together in that soup. And then that's going to help you to stay the course and keep yourself on track. And that's what my webinar this afternoon is designed to teach people how to do.
Great. Well, I tell you, I think it's so important that those who can join your webinar do so. I think it's important that we help people understand the basics of understanding how money works. And it uses an excellent point, replacing those negative emotions about money with goals and just changing how you feel about it, because the time is going to pass anyway. What are you going to do with the time if it's going to pass? So give us the information real quick about your webinar, how they can reach you, and things like that.
Here, let me throw that up on the screen right now.
Okay.
All right. So that's today at 5 p.m. How to make sure you never need another stimulus check is the topic.
I love it.
That's it. How do you create your own economic stimulus plan to make sure that if the government doesn't send out a stimulus check and a problem happens again, I'm good. I don't need it. Right. So everybody go to org4lifesolutions.com/events. That will be the gateway to get you to the page where you can actually register and be here this afternoon at 5 p.m. You're going to get an email that's going to give you a workbook to download. And I'm going to take you through the 5 SMART principles and show you how to incorporate that into your life so that if home ownership is your goal, you will definitely have the foundation to make it happen.
Oh, that's great, because that's a segment we're going to have coming up. We're going to be walking people through a 12 to 24-month process of what it takes, putting things in place from your credit to your budget to location, all those different things in place. So let me tell you, it's just been great. Forrest, I appreciate you coming on. If you can hold on for a second, I'm going to wrap up the show and tell people what's coming up next. Well, guys, there you have it. Again, we created this show, Your New Home TV, to not only tell you about the home buying process, but help you in the home buying process. And as a real estate professional, as a realtor, my job is to help you buy. I can help you with a listing. I can help you if you are looking to purchase a home. Database full of all the different houses, whether it's in Maryland, if you are looking for a home in a different state, or if you're looking to come to Maryland. Again, I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams Legacy, and we have relationships with realtors all over the country, all over the world, actually. So thank you for joining us. Please follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram is Your New Home TV. And tune in next week for the next show. We got something new coming up, and I'm sure you'll like it. Thanks again. I'm Calvin Watkins, realtor with Your New Home, Keller Williams Legacy, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Please like, share, subscribe, share this information, because there are a lot of people who are renting, and we would hate for them to miss this opportunity to buy a home with interest rates so low. It's a great opportunity. It's a great time to become a homeowner. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.